Hello and welcome to another Daily Office Digest. We are on the Annunciation to the Virgin Mary. It's a feast day today, so if you're doing a full-on Lenten discipline, you can actually be relieved from that, usually, depending on what the rule is you're living under. But we take an interruption from our usual readings, and we have a different section of readings we do for feast days. There are several kinds, but typically when we're talking about liturgical colors, oftentimes martyrs we switch to red. But for events and for saints who are non-martyrs, we use white. And so today would be a day, if we were having Holy Communion, which we're not, because of the pandemic, we would be using white in our vestments and so forth. Where you can find the readings for today would be after the usual lectionary. So in the beginning of the prayer book, we have this usual lectionary side to side. However, if you go forward, you'll find one upside down. You actually have to turn your prayer book 90 degrees. And it has the readings for morning and evening prayer in that, as well as if you want to do an Eve service, so Michaelmas Eve or whatever. But today's the Annunciation. So when Gabriel announced to Mary that she would bring forth a son, even though she was a virgin, and his name would be Emmanuel, he would be the Messiah. And we have all the story there. So what we find, the most obvious themes are found in the Collect and Propers for Holy Communion. But we have similar themes working behind bolstering these themes in our morning and evening prayer lessons. So let's go to those. The first one is Isaiah 52, 7 through 10. Now, Isaiah is one of my favorite books of the Bible, and you find all sorts of things, but we have here this reminder, or this powerful annunciation of how lovely on the mountain are the feet of him who brings good news. Well, good news of the gospel. One of the first messengers of the gospel that Christ was going to come, of course, is Gabriel. When he brings that news, right? He's bringing the news of the peacemaker. Christ is going to be a peacemaker between God and his own people, God and the world, God and man. And it's a theme of rejoicing, shout joyfully. And this is what we see with the faithful saints in those early parts of the gospel. Mary, others, Anna, Elizabeth, so forth. The Lord has bared his holy arm in the sight of all nations, that all the ends of the earth may see the salvation of our God. Right? This is March 25th, the Annunciation. We're talking about the incarnation of Jesus Christ. Jesus is God, fully God and fully man from the moment of his conception. That flows into our ethics of what we think about life issues. But what's interesting, right, this is the Theotokos. If Mary is the God-bearer because God takes on human flesh is in her womb. Once it's there, he is fully man. Jesus Christ is fully man. He's also fully God. She has God in her womb. She's, the West might call her the mother of God. So God-bearer. The other thing, notice the date, 9 months before Christmas. Right? That's how we do that. So March 25th is the Annunciation. 9 months later, we're going to have Christmas. So you can think in those terms already. This is a real thing that happened. This is a pregnancy that happened. And we follow the laws of that. But it's this exaltation of such good news. I remember, Tolkien in Lord of the Rings. I think the ring is thrown in on the day of the Annunciation, right? The big thing of evil is brought to an end, and we are to rejoice that God's salvation has come, right? The incarnate Christ has come. Our salvation will be accomplished, right? Things are really starting to go. Then we switch over here to Hebrews 2:5 and following. So we start at Hebrews 2:5 and we just go to the end of the chapter. If you're familiar with the lectionary, usually they'll have, if you just see one verse, like Hebrews 2:5. It doesn't mean just read one verse. It means read starting at 2:5 and then going to the end of the chapter. We have this, of course, one of the most beautiful books of the Bible is Hebrews. And we have this theme again of angels. And Jesus didn't come to save angels, he came to save men. He became a man. He becomes incarnate, takes on human flesh, exalts human flesh, but he humbles himself as God. So Christ humbles himself, takes on a lowly estate. But in the course of his ministry, and particularly in his victory on the cross, his resurrection, ascension, and session at the right hand of God, now humanity, human nature is exalted and brought high. Even there's theses, is we have this language of you will judge angels, or you are brought high. All things are now under a human's feet, right? Jesus Christ is the King of all things. All things are brought under his feet, including angels, because typically the hierarchy is man's a little lower than the angels, right? That's the metaphysics of typically what we find in the Bible, and this is what Hebrews points out. But he makes himself lower than the angels. Anything like that from being, exalted and recognized as God, and then he takes on human flesh without losing the full glory of God. Right? He is abused. He suffers as a man. He is rejected of men, but he's still fully God. He didn't give up any of his glory. Sorry, kenosis theory people, but he is still, all the fullness of God's glory is in him, the divine. And it's revealed sometimes for those who have faith, particularly the Mount of Transfiguration shows what's really going on. But we have this picture of Christ accomplishing salvation and why it was required that he become a man. He becomes a man to save men. What he takes on, what he assumes as his incarnation is redeemed, which is why he must assume everything that is man. He must be male. Right, female comes out of the male. Right, Eve comes from Adam, not Adam from Eve. So he has to be able to represent all of humanity. So he does that by being male. He is born. Of course, before that, he's conceived. He goes through the 9 months typically of pregnancy. He's tempted, just as we are, but he is victorious over that, unlike all of us. He has a will, human will. He has a human mind. He has a human body. He has everything that he has is human. If it's not in him, in his incarnation, if any part of us is not in him, it's not redeemed. So a lot of the heretical battles over heresy in the church's history are about defending either Christ's divinity or his humanity. And oftentimes, human energies, things like this that we see in the ecumenical councils, it's about him being fully man. So, because if not, that part of us doesn't get saved. But now we see, partaking of our nature, and he might render powerless him who had the power of death, that is, the devil, might free those who, through fear of death, were subject to slavery all their lives. So there's a lot of redemption there, atonement there. But you also see just this interaction between the angelic world and human world, and the divine. Again, a major theme for the Annunciation. An angel shows up. Jesus is man, but he deals with an angelic being, right? Satan. So you have good angels, you have these rebellious angelic spirits, and how the rules that apply to angels we don't know that well, but apparently it's different with regard to the laws that they are governed by. But an amazing point of God making propitiation for the sins of his people and his necessity to take on human nature to do that. So it's a beautiful thing about the gospel and how the incarnation is central to that. So let's think about that through this day.